What if everything you have been told about living alone after 70 is completely wrong? What if solitude and loneliness are not the same thing at all, and the secret to thriving alone has absolutely nothing to do with how many people visit you or how often your phone rings? I'm 84 years old, and I have lived completely alone for 11 years. During that time, I've discovered something that most people refuse to believe until they experience it themselves. Being alone and being lonely are two entirely different experiences, and you can have one without the other. Today, I'm going to share the 6 practices that have allowed me to live alone for over a decade without ever feeling lonely. The 4th practice changed everything for me. It is something most people assume would make loneliness worse, but it actually eliminated it completely. My name is Ruth. I am 84 years old, and I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I've lived alone for 11 years, ever since my husband Walter passed away after 52 years of marriage. When Walter died, everyone expected me to fall apart. My children wanted me to move closer to them. My friends worried I would wither away in isolation. Neighbors checked on me constantly, expecting to find me crying or confused or unable to cope. None of those things happened. I did not fall apart. I did not wither. I built a life that is full and meaningful and peaceful, and I am going to tell you exactly how I did it. Number 1. I learned the difference between being alone and being lonely. This single distinction saved my life in those early months after Walter died. Most people use these 2 words interchangeably, as if they describe the same experience, but they are completely different things. Being alone is a physical state. It simply means no one else is in the room with you. Being lonely is an emotional state. It means feeling disconnected, unseen, unimportant, like you do not matter to anyone. You can be surrounded by 100 people at a party and feel desperately lonely. You can spend an entire week without seeing another human being and never experience a moment of loneliness. Understanding this difference changes everything about how you approach living alone. Researchers at the University of Chicago, led by Dr. Louise Hawkley, have spent decades studying loneliness and have documented that it is fundamentally a subjective perception of social isolation rather than an objective measure of how much time you spend with others. Harvard Medical School research confirms that the quality of your social connections matters far more than the quantity of time you spend with people. You can have visitors every single day and still feel profoundly lonely if those interactions are shallow and meaningless. Conversely, you can live entirely alone and feel deeply connected to life and to others through meaningful relationships maintained in other ways. Confusing being alone with being lonely leads people down exactly the wrong path. They think the solution to their unhappiness is more social contact, more visitors, more activities with other people. So they force themselves into situations that exhaust them, surrounded by people they do not particularly enjoy, making small talk that leaves them feeling emptier than before. The actual problem was never the lack of bodies in the room. The problem was the lack of genuine connection, and that cannot be solved by simply adding more people to your schedule. My neighbor Pauline is 78 years old. Her children visit every weekend without fail. She has lunch with friends twice a week. She attends church events and community gatherings regularly. And yet every time I speak with her, she tells me how lonely she feels. Meanwhile, I can go 4 or 5 days without seeing another person face to face, and I feel completely connected to life. The difference between us is not our circumstances. The difference is how we understand and relate to our circumstances. Ask yourself honestly right now, do you feel genuinely disconnected from others, or are you simply physically alone? Your answer determines what you actually need to do next. Number 2, I created structure that gives my days meaning. Days without structure transform into weeks of emptiness faster than you can imagine. When you have nowhere to be and nothing that must be done, time becomes formless and frightening. You wake up without purpose. The hours stretch endlessly. You cannot remember what day it is or what you did yesterday. This is fertile ground for loneliness to take root and grow. The antidote is structure, not because structure keeps you busy, but because structure gives your days shape and meaning that you can feel. The National Institute on Aging has documented that consistent daily routines are strongly associated with better mental health and lower rates of depression among older adults who live alone. Research published in the Journal of Aging and Health confirms that having daily purpose, even something small and simple, significantly reduces feelings of loneliness regardless of how much social contact a person has. The structure itself becomes a form of companionship. Your routine becomes something you can rely on, something that gives your day a beginning, middle, and end that you can anticipate and appreciate. I learned this lesson the hard way during my first year alone. After Walter died, I had no structure at all. I slept until whenever I woke up. I stayed in my pajamas until afternoon. I ate meals at random times or forgot to eat at all. I lost track of what day it was. I would realize suddenly that 3 days had passed, and I had accomplished nothing and spoken to no one, and had no memory of how the time had disappeared. The loneliness during that period was crushing, not because I was alone, but because my life had lost all form and meaning. I was drifting through empty days with nothing to anchor me. Now my mornings are sacred and unchangeable. I wake at 6:30 every single day, regardless of how I feel or what the weather is doing. I make my coffee at 7 and sit in the same chair by the same window. I take my walk at 7:30, the same route every day. I read the newspaper at 8. This might sound boring to someone young, but to me, it is the architecture of a meaningful life. Every day has purpose before it even begins. Every morning I know exactly what I will do and why it matters. Write down your morning routine today. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. If you do not have a routine, that is the first problem you need to solve. Number 3. I invested in a few deep relationships instead of many shallow ones. You do not need dozens of friends to avoid loneliness. You do not need a packed social calendar or an overflowing contact list. What you need is depth, not breadth. You need a small number of people who truly know you, who you can be completely honest with, who will tell you the truth even when it is uncomfortable, and who you can call at 2 in the morning if something is wrong. 2 or 3 of those relationships are worth more than 100 acquaintances you only see at social gatherings and talk to about nothing that matters. The Harvard study of adult development has tracked participants for more than 85 years, making it one of the longest-running studies of human life ever conducted. The central finding, repeated over and over across decades of data, is that the quality of your relationships predicts your health and happiness far more than the quantity. Researchers at Brigham Young University conducted a massive meta-analysis and found that having just 2 or 3 genuinely close relationships provides the same protection against loneliness and its health consequences as having a large and active social network. It is not about how many people you know. It is about how well you know them and how well they know you. Maintaining dozens of superficial relationships is exhausting work that leaves you drained and still lonely. You spend energy on people you do not particularly like, attending events you do not enjoy, having conversations that never go below the surface. You come home tired from all that socializing and still feel like no one really knows you, because no one does. You have spread yourself so thin across so many relationships that none of them have any depth. You have traded quality for quantity and ended up with neither. I have 2 true friends in my life. Their names are Marlene and June. We have known each other for over 30 years. We talk on the phone every week, sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes for an hour. They know everything about me, my fears, my regrets, my health problems, my opinions about my children. I can say anything to them without worrying about being judged. When I am struggling, they notice in my voice before I even say anything is wrong. 2 friends. That is all I have. That is all I need. Who are your 2 or 3 people? If you cannot name them immediately, that is the problem you need to solve before anything else. Number 4. I embraced solitude as a gift, not punishment. This is the practice that changed everything for me, and it is the one most people misunderstand completely. When I tell people that I have learned to love my time alone, they assume I'm making the best of a bad situation, putting a brave face on loneliness. But that is not what this is at all. I genuinely love being alone. The silence of my home in the evening is not something I endure, it is something I treasure. Embracing solitude does not make loneliness worse. It eliminates loneliness entirely by transforming your relationship with being alone. Researchers at the University of Rochester published a study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology that found people who actively choose solitude and view it positively experience significantly greater well-being than those who view their time alone as something imposed upon them against their will. The circumstances can be identical, 2 people living alone with similar social contact, but their experiences are completely different based on how they frame their situation. Stanford University research on the neuroscience of solitude found that when people view alone time positively, it activates brain regions associated with creativity, self-reflection, and inner peace. When they view it negatively, it activates stress responses instead. For years after Walter died, I dreaded the evenings. That was when his absence felt most acute. The house was too quiet. The hours stretched endlessly between dinner and bedtime. I would turn on the television just to hear voices, not because I wanted to watch anything. I was fighting against the solitude, resisting it, treating it as an enemy I had to defeat or distract myself from. And the more I resisted, the worse I felt. The loneliness grew stronger precisely because I was refusing to accept my circumstances. The shift happened when I stopped resisting and started choosing. Instead of dreading my evenings alone, I began designing them intentionally. Now at 7 every evening I make myself a cup of herbal tea. I sit in my favorite armchair, the one by the window that Walter always used to sit in. I read for 2 hours in absolute silence. No television, no radio, just me and my book and the quiet. This is now the best part of my day. I would not trade it for anything. The silence that once frightened me now feels like the deepest form of peace. Are you resisting your solitude or embracing it? Your answer determines whether you will suffer or thrive. Number 5. I stay physically active every single day. Movement is not just about keeping your body healthy, it is about keeping your mind healthy. And perhaps most importantly, for those of us who live alone, it is about getting out of the house and into the world. When you stay inside day after day, your world shrinks. Your walls become a prison, even if the door is unlocked. Breaking that pattern requires physical movement that takes you outside, even if only for a few minutes, even if you do not feel like it. The Mayo Clinic has documented that regular physical activity reduces symptoms of depression and anxiety by as much as 30% in older adults. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention confirms that physical activity is directly connected to better mental health and reduced social isolation among seniors. The National Institute on Aging recommends that older adults engage in some form of physical activity every single day, even if it is just 15 or 20 minutes of gentle walking. The movement itself triggers chemical changes in your brain that improve mood and reduce the kinds of negative thought patterns that lead to loneliness. The trap that many people who live alone fall into is the cycle of stillness. You do not feel like going out, so you stay in. Staying in makes you feel worse, which makes you feel even less like going out. Your energy drops, your motivation disappears, days pass without you leaving your home, and the isolation deepens with each day that passes. The walls close in, the world outside starts to feel foreign and threatening. Breaking this cycle requires movement, even when you do not want to move, especially when you do not want to move. Even on days when everything in me wants to stay inside, I walk for at least 15 minutes. Rain or shine, cold or hot, feeling good or feeling terrible. I put on my shoes and I go outside and I move my body through space. Sometimes I see neighbors and we wave or exchange a few words. Sometimes I do not see anyone at all. It does not matter. The act of moving, of being outside, of feeling the air on my face, that is what breaks the cycle and keeps the walls from closing in. Did you leave your house today? If not, stop reading this and take a walk around the block right now. Do not think about it. Just do it. Number 6. I contribute to something bigger than myself. Loneliness thrives when you are focused entirely on yourself, on your own problems, your own needs, your own suffering. It withers when you turn your attention outward, when you focus on what you can give rather than what you lack. Contributing to something beyond yourself, whether through formal volunteering or simple acts of service, connects you to the larger human community in ways that passive social contact never can. When you are helping others, it becomes impossible to feel like you do not matter. The Corporation for National and Community Service has documented that volunteers over the age of 65 consistently report significantly lower levels of loneliness and depression than non-volunteers with similar circumstances. Research published in the Journal of Gerontology found that contributing to your community in any form increases your sense of purpose and belonging, which are the two most powerful antidotes to loneliness that exist. It does not matter how small your contribution is. What matters is that you are giving something of yourself to others. When you focus only on your own life, your own health, your own problems, your world becomes very small and your problems become very large. Every ache feels catastrophic. Every inconvenience feels like injustice. You become the center of a shrinking universe. But when you shift your focus to others, to what you can offer, to who needs what you have to give, your world expands again. Your problems find their proper proportion. You remember that you are part of something larger than yourself. Every Tuesday afternoon, I call 3 people from my church who can no longer leave their homes. They are older than me, or sicker than me, or have mobility problems that keep them trapped inside. Our conversations are simple. I ask how they are feeling. I listen to whatever they want to tell me. Sometimes we talk for 5 minutes, sometimes for 20. It takes almost nothing from me, but I know it means everything to them. And here is the secret that most people do not understand. Those calls do as much for me as they do for them. On Tuesdays, it is impossible to feel lonely because I am too busy connecting with others. Who could you call this week who needs to hear a friendly voice? 11 years of living alone have taught me that loneliness is not an inevitable consequence of being by yourself. Loneliness is a choice, or more accurately, it is the result of a series of small choices we make every day. I choose to understand that being alone and being lonely are different things. I choose to create structure that gives my days meaning. I choose to invest deeply in a few relationships rather than superficially in many. I choose to embrace solitude as a gift rather than fight it as a punishment. I choose to move my body every day no matter how I feel. I choose to contribute to something larger than myself. These choices do not change the fact that I live alone. They change everything else. Do you also live alone? Tell me in the comments which of these 6 practices you already do and which one you plan to start this week. Your experience could be exactly what another viewer needs to hear today to realize they are not alone in this journey. If this video changed how you think about living alone after 60 or 70 or 80, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs this message. Subscribe to this channel for more truths about aging well that go against what society expects from us, but that actually work.